Hello, my loves. It's been such a long time. I'm so sorry for just disappearing for like 3 months. I didn't intend for that to happen, but it just kind of did. I won't bore you with like all the details, but I have had an awful lot going on in my life over the past few months, and I hadn't actually intended to take any time off filming at all. I then was like, oh, I'm just gonna take like a week or a couple of weeks off, and then somehow that turned into 3 months. Very sorry for just disappearing and not really saying anything. One change that you might have noticed is I have moved, so that is exciting, a new space. I'm still figuring out layout and everything. I clearly need to sort out my bookshelf. I've been really putting off doing that, but I will be doing that soon, and I'm planning on potentially, as I'm reorganizing, doing a bit of an unhaul of some books that I'm never going to read or have already read and didn't particularly like and don't want to keep. Look out for that, because I will probably film that so I can just yap about the books I'm throwing away and why I'm throwing them away while I do that. We also have a new guest. This is Ethel. I found her in the dump and I love her. I don't really know where to put her. I thought she would sit down and she could go on my bookshelf, but she doesn't, so she'll probably just be around at various points. I hope she doesn't creep you out too much. We also have another guest today, which is a fly that has been living in my flat for the past 5 days. It's refusing to leave, even though windows have been open most of the time over those few days, and it just wants to stay here. It's also obsessed with me. Got woken up at 7 o'clock this morning by it repeatedly flying into my head. It will not leave me alone, and I don't know why. I promise I don't smell that bad. I can hear it buzzing around somewhere. I don't actually know where it is right now, but if you see or hear a fly, if it lands on me at some point, he's just here now. I feel like I can't kill him. I feel like we've kind of become friends, so he's just here. So because it has been such a long time, I kind of just wanted to sit down and talk about what I have been reading recently. I'll be completely honest with you guys, I have actually not read that much over the past 2 months specifically. I don't think I read anything at all in August actually. But before that, I had read, so I'm not going to talk through everything because it would end up being quite a few books, and we all know my memory is not great, so I probably wouldn't remember a lot of them, but I do just want to talk about some of the best and worst things I've read over the past few months, just as a little, I don't know, a little reset to get back into this, updating, all of that. I hope all you guys have been well. I have missed reading all your guys' comments, responding to them, and talking to you guys in general, so I hope all of you have been doing super well over the past few months. I hope you've had good reading months, just good life months in general, and I'm glad to be back and chatting with you guys again. Right, we're gonna look at the worst books of the past few months first. There isn't actually that many, mainly because I haven't read a huge amount. You know that I can't help but complain, and some of these books I was waiting to be able to just complain to you guys about them, and I was very sad that I couldn't. So I've been saving this up, but to be able to moan and hopefully to have you guys share my commiserations about some of these books. The first two I'm gonna lump together for obvious reasons because they are Fearless and Reckless by Lauren Roberts. God, I hated these books. I hated these 2 books so much, and I don't really know why I forced myself to read them. A very long time ago, I don't even know if you could see the fly. It's on my arm now. A very long time ago, probably a year or longer ago, I don't really remember, I read Powerless, the first book in this series. I believe I talked about it in a video, which I will link if you would like to see my thoughts on the first book. Spoiler alert, I did not like it, and I didn't actually intend to read the other 2 books at all because I knew I wasn't gonna like them, but my best friend wanted me to read them because she was so annoyed about the twist resolution plot in the last book that she wanted me to read it so she could complain about it to me. So because I'm a good friend, I did that. In case you have been lucky enough to avoid ever hearing about this book series, let me just give you a very brief summary based on my very limited memory. Fantasy, we're in a world where having magic is seen as a bad thing. No, not having magic is seen as a bad thing. Yes, not having magic is seen as a bad thing. And our main character is Peyton, and I fucking hate her. She's powerless and she's just trying to survive in the world, and then she meets Kai, who is also horrific, and he is the enforcer for the like royals. He's the prince, I think, but the king hates him. He is supposed to like kill people who don't have magic. I'm pretty sure that's the plot of the books, but I'm gonna be honest, I don't really remember. I especially don't remember the first one very well. In the first one, she has to do some trials. She gets selected to do some trials, and that's the main summary. I'm sure you know what it's about. My thoughts on, let's separate them a little bit, even though my thoughts about them were the same, but I do have very specific things to say about the middle one. Reckless, specifically. So Reckless, book 2 in this 3-book series. Get away from me. A second book, a middle book in a series, a trilogy, whatever, is always going to be the hardest. It's one that particularly always struggles, but this just took it to a new level. This book genuinely could have been 2 chapters. There was no reason at all for this to be a trilogy, and this book specifically, I think, really highlights that. If you haven't read Powerless and you want to, I'd advise you don't, but if you want to and you don't want any potential spoilers, they're not huge spoilers, but like you might not want to listen to some of this. In our second book, Peyton and Kai are on the run, right? That's the whole thing. Well, Peyton specifically is on the run and Kai is trying to catch her because he's the enforcer. You would think, oh, this is gonna be, you know, tense, high stakes, there's gonna be action, betrayal, whatever. No, literally nothing happens in this book. All that happens is Peyton and Kai have the same irritating conversations over and over and over again, and it's really annoying. And look, I know nothing needs to happen in a book for it to be good. The problem I have with this, and I feel like, you know, yeah, this could just be a personal issue, but if you're going to have a mainly relationship or character driven book, you need to make the characters at least somewhat likable, or dislikable in a way that you are motivated to find out what happens to them. I could not care less about either of these characters because they are horrific. They are atrocious. I hate both of them. I don't care what happens to them. I don't care if she gets caught. I don't care if she dies. I don't care if they end up together. I don't care if they both die, because they are both so irritating. A lot of this book series in general was very repetitive, and I think this book, where there wasn't much plot, really highlighted it. I think I remember saying after I'd read Powerless that it felt a lot like each chapter had been written in isolation, like almost like as a one-shot, and then just kind of put together, and sort of there hadn't been like a look back at it to see how these things fitted, and that led to a lot of repetition of things being said over and over again. And I feel like this book still felt like that, but even worse, and it was highlighted even more because there wasn't any plot like stringing it along together, you know? There were a few like, you know, action points. There was the underlying plot still of she's on the run and he's trying to like arrest her essentially, but that did feel quite forgotten about. They were just having these really irritating conversations and having like really deep thoughts, but actually they were just thinking a whole lot of nothing. And I think the difficulty for me especially as well was it was just those 2 characters the whole time. Not that I particularly liked any of the other characters in this series either, but because it was particularly just those 2 characters and I hate both of them, and there was nothing else happening, there was no buffer for it. You know, there was nothing to like soften how irritating they were. We had a particularly great main character moment from Peyton where she'd specifically said that she'd never swum a day in her life. She doesn't know how to swim. And yet when Kai is potentially drowning in a sewer and she's already climbed out, she manages to jump back in, swim, and pull him out, even though she's never swum before. And she's supposed to be like really small and he's like massive, but somehow she manages to do that. Could not tell you how they didn't both drown. I wish they had. Moving on to Fearless, slightly better because at least there were actually some things happening. There was some plot here. That doesn't mean it was good. I did not enjoy this either. I think I probably rated both of these 1 star, and I would have rated them less if that was an option on Goodreads and Storygraph. Oh no, it is on Storygraph. Maybe I rated them 0.5 because they were so bad. Oh, I forgot. Sorry, actually, in Reckless, there's just a couple of quotes I'd like to read you that really made me laugh because of how stupid they are. There was this whole big moment of Kai talking about his sister who had died or something, I don't really remember, and how he used to kiss her thumbs, and like how it was then such a big thing for him to be kissing Peyton's thumbs. It's just fucking weird to me. For one, it's weird for 2 reasons, right? It's weird because it's a thumb. Why are we making such a big deal out of thumbs? That's a bit odd. And 2, why are you comparing the like sibling care and love that you had towards your sister to the romantic love that you have? Surely those have 2 different meanings. It just felt a bit weird. But the 2 specific quotes, they were supposed to be like really deep and meaningful, were like, I've never kissed a thumb that wasn't hers. I've never cared enough to kiss someone else's thumbs. Great. I don't think I've ever kissed anyone's thumbs. If I did then go and kiss someone's thumb, I don't think I'd be like, oh my god, this is such a deep and meaningful moment for me. And you can say like, oh, it's deep and meaningful because it had a reason to with his dead sister, and so it means something to him. But like, it was just so weird, and it felt like it was supposed to be like really cute and romantic, and it was just fucking stupid. I really hate these books. So anyway, going back to Fearless, is that the last one? Yeah. The twist, or if you want to call it a twist, I did not care for. I did not particularly enjoy it. I could understand why Becky was so annoyed about it. It was not good. This entire series to me felt very much like it didn't know where it was going. This is just the way it read to me. It felt like the author had written each part as they were going along with no real thought of what was gonna come and how it was gonna like end, which is fine if you want to write like that. Some people do and do it very successfully, but you need to go back and revise things to either sort of add in details to make it make sense, or just rework things so it doesn't seem like really obvious that you're just finding your way as you're writing it, because that is very much what it felt like. It didn't feel like this had been particularly planned or thought out. It felt like, oh shit, my first book did well. I could turn this into a 3-book series. Don't really know what would happen in the second book, so I'll just do some filler. And then in the 3rd book, I guess this can happen? Sure. Like, that, it didn't really feel particularly organised in any way. Oh my god, please leave me alone. Why are you so obsessed with me? Please leave me alone. I don't really know what else to say because I feel like pretty much everything I said about Reckless is the same here. So I just did not have a good time, and I've been needing to get this rant out of my system. I mean, literally anyone I've spoken to who's asked me about what I've been reading recently has been subjected to a rant about this series, and I will frequently tell people not to read it because I don't think it's good, and there are much better fantasies and romantasies out there, and we all know I'm not the biggest fan of romantasy, but this one in particular is literally the worst thing I've ever read in my life, and I would never recommend it. Don't read it. Switching dramatically, this is still a disappointment. I didn't hate it quite as much, so this might be less ranty, hopefully. But my other worst of the past few months is The Butcher's Daughter by David Demchuk and Connie Lee Clark. I was so excited when I found out about this book. My older siblings sent it to me and they were like, hey, you might like this. And I was like, do you know what, you're right, I probably will. Because it's the untold story of Mrs. Lovett from Sweeney Todd. I love Sweeney Todd. The musical is one of my favourite musicals of all time. I really, really love it. The soundtrack featured heavily on my Spotify Wrapped last year. So I was really excited to read this, and unfortunately it was a massive disappointment. I think the main reason I found this so disappointing is because of the characterization of Mrs. Lovett in it. So if you've not seen Sweeney Todd, she's clearly not very well. She's quite unhinged, quite strange, very obsessive in terms of her love and devotion, adoration towards Sweeney Todd, and would literally do anything for him, including killing a child. Did she kill the child? No, she just left him down there to die, I think, but she didn't actually kill him. You get the point, she would do anything. So this book is supposed to be like her backstory, right? We don't really have any backstory of her in the musical, or as far as I believe, the original Penny Dreadful series that this was... I can't remember when this was published. Was it 1700s? Even like 1840s it was published, which I have not read, but I do have, and I have started reading. So I'll get back to you on actually if this book's accurate in comparison to that. But as far as I'm aware, it's not. This book, The Butcher's Daughter, is supposed to be her backstory. How did she get to the human pie making person that she was, right? I feel like what this book did instead was actually just strip her of any personality that she had and it presented her as slightly odd, but not really odd enough. And this book could have literally been about any Victorian woman. It wasn't about Mrs. Lovett. It could have been any Victorian woman, and I think that's what annoyed me. The style of this novel was a series of letters that Mrs. Lovett was writing to someone called Miss Gibson, as well as a few other letters between other people and some like newspaper articles as well. And I personally think that was a bad choice for a couple of reasons. One, who the fuck's Miss Gibson? We're never told who Miss Gibson is. You can kind of work out she's maybe a journalist, and she's got something going on with her life as well. We get little snippets of things going on in her life, but I have no clue who she is, or where she came from, or why Mrs. Lovett is just deciding to tell her everything. Like, it doesn't really make any sense, and I feel like there was absolutely no need for it. There was nothing that was added to the plot with it being done like that, and it actually just made it quite confusing and frustrating. I feel like if it had just been told as a regular story, it probably would have worked better. With that being said though, even if the exact same story had been told in that way without all of the letters, we still would have not had any proper characterization of Mrs. Lovett. She's not particularly obsessive. She actually really doesn't like Sweeney Todd in this book, which just made no sense to me. And I appreciate, like, you know, with things like this where we don't have a backstory for a character, you're going to take interpretations from things, right? You're going to put your own spin on it, and that's fine. I like that, be creative. But the thing that makes Mrs. Lovett so great is the fact that she's kind of crazy. I just wasn't there. She's a bit odd, but she's not crazy. She's not obsessive. She doesn't like Sweeney. There's a random relationship that she has with a woman earlier in the book. I don't remember who she is. It's where she's living somewhere else. And that relationship made absolutely no sense to me. Mainly because there was no chemistry between the two characters at all. There was no real build-up for it. The issue I then had with that was it completely removes her entire character motivation, which is the fact that she's obsessed with Sweeney Todd. Like, if you wanted to have that relationship, fine, but, like, you know, make her bisexual. We exist. You didn't need to completely remove that. Every choice that was made frustrated me quite a lot. Also, the Freemasons were randomly like a big part of this, but they also weren't a big part. Like, they kept being mentioned, and like there was some pretty messed up shit that they did, but then there was just never a resolution to it, and I don't really understand the choice to make the Freemasons such a big part of this either. Like, it was just a bit of an odd choice. One good thing I will say about this is that it did send me down this random research rabbit hole that was quite interesting. I don't remember how I got there. I know I ended up on Nikola Tesla's Wikipedia page. I went on a nice random rabbit hole there thanks to this book, but I did not enjoy it otherwise. I rated it 2 stars. If anyone knows any other retellings or like backstories of characters from Sweeney Todd, please let me know, because I would happily read that. I didn't realize it was something I was missing until I read this and was severely disappointed. I am going to read the original story. Like I said, I've already started reading it, but I'm not that far into it. But if anyone has any recommendations, please let me know. That is the worst out of the way. Let's talk about the best things that I read over the past few months. There was some books that I wanted to talk about that I had a feeling I'd already mentioned in other videos a while ago because I was reading them at the time, but I can't actually remember because it's been such a long time. Anyway, I've got 3 good books that I really enjoyed. The first really good book was actually recommended by one of you, so I would like to say thank you very much, Sleeping Librarian, because this book was so good and I really enjoyed it. So thank you for recommending it. And that was Blood on Her Tongue by Johanna van Veen. I don't know if I've said that right. I probably haven't said that right. But this book was so good. This was recommended in my last vampire wrap-up month video. So this is vampires, gothic, so good. It's very much a story of like sisterly love, but also there's vampires. So our main character, who I'm sorry, I've forgotten her name, but she goes to visit her sister who's very unwell and is kind of trying to look after her, and she's just getting progressively more and more unwell and not really acting like herself. Basically, it's like looking at what would you do for your sister, but also, is that really your sister? It was a really good book. It was very gothic in setting, atmosphere, vibe, which I really appreciated. It's also set in the 1800s, I believe. I think all of my best books are set in the 1800s, so there's a definite theme here. This was a very interesting take on vampires, which it was steeped in like some traditional folklore, but also quite different at the same time, and a bit of a different take, especially to what is very common in vampire media now. So it was very much more about, I suppose, like possession rather than you just become yourself but you're a vampire, you know? It was more like the vampire sort of takes over you. Our main character was so odd in ways that I really enjoyed. She was very strange, not super overtly, like she came across as quite a normal woman a lot of the time, and then every so often she'd think or say or do something that was just very strange. It made me question her a little bit. I loved that for her. I really enjoyed her character and the development she went on. She started as quite meek, quite almost like the sister that is quiet, the sister who the other one's achievements take over. The other one always gets like the attention and the focus. So she was more of like the background, timid, quiet character, and she sort of throughout the story as things are happening and she's going a bit more insane, she comes out of herself more. She has more confidence. She learns stuff about herself. It was a really nice development, I think, of her character, but also of the other sort of more secondary characters as well. This book did have me absolutely cringing at times, and I don't mean cringing out of embarrassment. I mean cringing out of that is absolutely vile. There is some gore, there's some real sort of like body horror in it, which I really enjoyed and was really good. I like books that can make me have that sort of visceral reaction without being scary necessarily, or just doing it for the shock of it. I feel like it fit the theme and the setting and the story very well. But just if you don't like that kind of thing, or if you're slightly squeamish, you might not enjoy this, because I don't think I'm a particularly squeamish person, and there were parts of it where I was like, that is disgusting, that is vile, and I was like sat there like not even able to look at the page, you know? I feel like we have moved towards vampires being too perfect and too pretty and all of that, and I like returning to the roots of actually, no, these are kind of horrible, gross demons. Actually, they don't really give a shit, and sort of adding some of that horror and grossness through that in the very visceral writing. I thought it worked beautifully. This book also left me very deep in thought afterwards, and we all know I love a book that leaves me thinking and staring at a wall for a while afterwards. Very much thinking over what actually makes a person, which again, I don't want to spoil too much of what actually happens, but if you think about the way vampires work in this being very much about possession and sort of taking over someone, the way they phrase it and the way they're talking about it did really make me think, like, if you have all the same memories and even though they didn't experience them, but they can remember them as if it happened to them, and they're in the same body. Like, how different is it to actually being that person? And I know it's very different, but it did leave me very deep in thought, and I really enjoyed that. I like having something to ponder over after I finish reading, and it's a book that's come back to me quite a few times as well. Like, I've thought about it frequently. That question has returned to me frequently. So it was a really, really good recommendation. Thank you again. I absolutely loved it. I think I settled on 4.5 stars. I can't exactly remember, but I really enjoyed it. My next gothic 19th century read that I really enjoyed over the past few months was Our Hideous Progeny by C.E. McGill. I don't think I've talked about this book before. Very sorry if I had, but it does feel now like it was quite a long time since I last read it. So maybe I have talked about it, but if I haven't, I'm going to talk about it again anyway. I borrowed this from the library. I was just like having a look around. I didn't really have anything particular in mind, and I picked it up and I was like, this sounds like it could be good, but it also sounds kind of ridiculous. I'll read it and see. And it ended up being really good. So to frame why it sounds kind of ridiculous, Mary is the great niece of Victor Frankenstein. She knows her great uncle disappeared in mysterious circumstances in the Arctic, but she doesn't know why or how. It does sound, in my opinion, it sounds a bit silly, but stick with me because it was a really good book. So our main character, Mary, is a very clever woman. She's married to a dude called Henry. I've learned that Henrys in any like Victorian era set book are just going to be awful. This dude is no exception. He's not the worst, but he's definitely not great. She's married to him. He's some kind of scientist, a geologist, I don't remember. She's also very clever. She helps him with his studies. Obviously, she's not like the face of it, or people don't know that as much because of the time it's set in, but she is very knowledgeable, very thirsty for knowledge, and they're particularly interested in dinosaurs specifically. And this is a time where sort of fossils and dinosaurs are being reconstructed and discovered and all of that, and she stumbles across her great uncle Frankenstein's research and decides to think, maybe I could do something a little bit better than just putting some bones together. So again, sounds kind of ridiculous, but the atmosphere was very good. I could really imagine everywhere we were, especially when they were like doing all of their research in this like big manor in Scotland. It was very atmospheric. The writing and descriptions of things were really good. I really, really liked Mary as a character. I think she was very well written, very well developed, and again, she had a little bit of that. She didn't start as meek. She was never meek. She was always kind of like outspoken, not really what society wanted women to be at the time, but she was very good at playing the part of being the good wife and socialite and all of that, and just watching her like grow and resent that more and more. Amazing. And something that this book and the last one and another Victorian era book that I read recently, Hungerstone, something that all of them have in common that I'm realizing I really, really enjoy specifically in a Victorian era book is just the woman who is the main character slowly realizing that her husband and all of the other men in her life are useless twats and taking things into their own hands. Love it. It's wonderful. And this very much happened here, where she is so clever, where she isn't meek and quiet and what society wants her to be. She very much wants to go forward with her scientific findings, but she doesn't want to just be in the shadows anymore. So it's kind of that. There's also a little bit of romance there. There's a bit of the science fiction in terms of Frankenstein. There's dinosaurs, if you like dinosaurs. It's a very weird mashup of things happening. It doesn't sound like something I would like, but I probably enjoyed this more than I enjoyed Frankenstein. And I did like Frankenstein. It's not like a retelling, I guess, but it was a good take on that idea and that story, I think. The final book that I only finished yesterday, and I'm already very sad that I finished, and I completely lied because this is not set in the 19th century at all, is Road Trip with a Vampire by Jenna Levine. Jenna Levine, I know you're not watching this, but I would just like you to know, I love you so much. I love your books. I love these characters. I love these stories. They were so, so good, and I am so, so sad that the My Vampires series is now over. I'm very excited for her next book, which I think is about a Grim Reaper romance, maybe? These vampire books I've talked about them so many times. You guys all know that I really enjoy these very, very silly little vampire romances, and this one was very good. I don't think it was my favourite of the series. I still think the second one was my favourite, mainly because Reggie, who is the main character in the second book, is my absolute favourite. But Reggie does make an appearance in Road Trip with a Vampire, which was very nice, and I did like both of the characters in this book as well. The premise of Road Trip with a Vampire is our main character, Zelda, is a witch who's kind of had a difficult, chaotic past, and she wants to just leave that and her former self behind her. She wants to leave her magic behind her and just run her yoga studio with her friends. We have our vampire, what the fuck's his name? Peter, who has amnesia. He suddenly ends up by Zelda's yoga studio and he doesn't remember how he got her there. He doesn't remember who he is, and she basically sets out to help him because Reggie has sent Peter her way. They go on this road trip to try and retrace his previous steps, find out who he was, how he'd ended up there, and what he was doing, essentially. And of course they get closer as they are on this road trip. It was very good. It had a lot of silly moments that made me laugh. I do feel like it was a little bit more awkward at times than maybe the previous books. I'll be honest, I don't remember the first one very well, other than that I loved it. But this one did feel like, in the writing, the dialogue especially felt a little bit more awkward at times, but I don't go into these books looking for a work of classic literature with like poetic prose and really long atmospheric descriptions and atmosphere. You know, I go into these books because I know they're going to be stupid, silly, and have vampires in them. And Jenna, you delivered. It was a fun, silly time. My favourite silly moment from this, which I was reading this on the train and was trying not to laugh out loud on the train. If you particularly care about spoilers for this book, this is technically a bit of a spoiler for like our main character's backstory. It's 14% of the way in the book, so it is quite early that we find this out, so it's not really a huge spoiler, but she's basically talking about her past and like the really bad things she did, and like the thing that made her turn her back on magic altogether was like this prank that went wrong. So I'm just going to read it to you. I was to start up a sudden windstorm to encourage people near the Evanston Recreation Centre to hurry inside. Once the building had achieved critical mass, Basil Frent would walk into the room looking as much like Timothy Chalamet as we could manage to get a 6'7" broad-shouldered vampire to look. He would shout, "Timmy Chalamet is here." Everyone would get a thrill. Basil would have his pig of excitable humans for dinner, and we'd both enjoy a laugh. That was the prank that they were supposed to do, and it went terribly wrong and a lot of people got injured. The whole time she'd been taught, like, her nickname in like previous life, because she's really old, she's like an immortal witch, was Griselda the Terrible. Like, she was supposed to be like awful and people feared her, and I was like, this was the shit you were doing? You were just getting a vampire to pretend to be Timothy Chalamet? Like, that was all that was gonna happen? And somehow that went really badly wrong. Really made me laugh because it was just so stupid. One thing I will point out, me thinking too much about this very silly moment in the book. These books are not meant to be taken seriously, but she has later in the book that happened a decade ago, and I don't think, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think Timothy Chalamet was that famous in 2015. I don't think much would have happened. It was just really silly. Kind of exactly what I needed after a couple of months of barely being able to read anything just because my concentration wasn't there. I didn't really have time because of so many other things going on and like moving and stuff, and I've been looking forward to this book for months, so having something silly, easy to read that I literally read in like 2 settings was much appreciated. The romance was good, it was cute, there was, as is always in these books, there's a little bit of plot that actually in this one was solved in I don't want to say a better way, because the way the plot problems are solved in the other books are also silly and ridiculous and I love them, but the way it was solved in this book was a little bit more like what you would expect from a fantasy romance, and like not serious, but it like made sense, the solution, a little bit more. And I liked the addition of other characters that were in there too, specifically Reggie. God bless Reggie, I love him so much. It was a good time I really enjoy these books, even though I know they're not the best. And I would really recommend them to anyone who, especially, you know, as we're approaching spooky season, wants something silly and lighthearted, but still like feeling kind of Halloweeny. That is the best and worst of my last few months. Like I said, I haven't really read super loads. That doesn't make sense. I haven't really read a huge amount, so I'm hoping I will now probably have time to read more again and like properly get back into it. I'm looking forward to making videos again, talking to you guys more often, so please do let me know down below what you've been reading, what I've missed out on, how you've been. Just let me know all the details that I've missed, because I've missed you guys. But I hope wherever you are, you're having a wonderful day, and I will see you guys soon. Bye.